So, environmental practices of big businesses. Yeah, as you can see on through your screen, we have summary completion questions, which are, which tends to be, um, tiny bit harder than most of the times. So, let's see what we can do. On the other hand, we have also multiple choice questions, and we have yes and no questions. Along with, finally, we have this wonderful um what would be the best subheading for this passage. So we have subheading, the public should be prepared to fund environmental something else. The main idea, the third paragraph and the fourth paragraph, and what pressure was exerted by big businesses of the BSE. So what pressure was exerted? Okay. So I'm just going to give this a number 30, 32, so that I know that I will navigate to that question. And this one is 33. And finally, this one is going to be 34 because the questions come from that part. The first question is summary completion. So therefore we have big businesses. We have to harm people, environment, in order to make money, and they appear to have no something, lack of something else by government, and lack of public can lead to environmental problems, such as something or the destruction of something else. These words, we do not choose words from the passage, but instead we find the plot of the idea, or we just have to put the synonyms to the word. So let's see. The environmental practices of big businesses are shaped by a fundamental fact that, for many of us, offend our sense of justice. So, offend our sense of justice. Depending on this, you can see offend our sense of justice is moral standards. Depending on the circumstances, a business may maximize the amount of money it makes, at least in the short term, by damaging the environment and hurting people. That is still the case today for a fisherman in an unmanaged fishery. So we have in an unmanaged fishery without quotas. Quota means control, official, officially to being able to do something officially. And for international logging companies, with short-term leases on tropical forest land in places with corrupt officials and unsophisticated landowners. When government regulation is effective, and when the public is environmentally aware, environmentally clean big businesses may outcompete dirty ones, but the reverse is likely to be true if government, excuse me, um, if but the reverse is likely to be true if government regulation is ineffective and if the public doesn't care. That's a pretty interesting story to hear. Now, many big businesses today are prepared to harm people and the environment in order to make money. So we already found that uh, maximizing the amount of money it makes in the law, at least in the short term, by damaging the environment, you can see in the end the environment and hurting people, in order to make money, and they appear to have no something. Um, So the environmental practices of big business are shaped by a fundamental fact that for many of us, offend means kind of they have offend means no, our sense of justice, which is moral standards, lack of something else by governments. So lack of unmanaged fishery without quotas, is here overfishing. Overfishing, so which means lack of what? Um, so international logging companies here should be uh, what is that? Trees? Is it trees? I think it should be trees, right? So I mean destruction of trees, is it? So yeah, destruction of trees, and moreover, we have um if government regulation is ineffective means um lack of control by the government. So such as or lack of public so a lack of control. It should be control. Whoops. Control, and if the public doesn't care means public involvement. Involvement. The reason for that is because because we have to understand the function of the government. Government is meant to control, right? To control the society and whatever they happen to do. And if the public doesn't care, the public is about contributing to the society to make it flourishing in let's say in a much formal way. So therefore, lack of something by government, a lack of something else. So lack of control should be the answer, first one. So lack of control by governments and lack of public and lack of ineffective means reverse is likely to be true, but if government regulation is ineffective and the public doesn't care. So the word here ineffective is not necessarily playing the um it's not playing the role of I would say the verb, but instead noun. Uh so like that's the grammatical trick here. So lack of like so which means control by governments and lack of public. So if the public doesn't care, so if the public doesn't care, that means if they're not caring because they don't want to involve themselves, because they don't want to work with it, because if they work with it, they go into it, which means involvement. So lack of public involvement so far, if I know, if I'm not wrong, or however, can lead to environmental problems such as so it can lead to unmanaged fishery without quotas, which is H. But environmental problems such as overfishing, overfishing. Where's overfishing? H. And the destruction of trees. Destruction of trees. Internationally, logging companies. Logging means to cut down trees and make business from it. So, where is it? Trees. We have B here. Now, if we jump straight through paragraph 3, our blaming of business also ignores the ultimate responsibility of the public for creating the condition that let a business profit through destruction of environmental policies. In the long run, which means in the future, it is the public. It is the public, either directly or through its politicians, that has the power to make such destructive policies unprofitable and illegal. That means to make changes. And thus, I mean, to make sustainable environmental policies profitable. So, like, sustain environmental policies profitable means to prioritize environmental policies than making something then giving a lot gaining more profit than gaining more profit from illegal businesses like overfishing and logging. So the main idea is that requires a political action if it is stopped, if it is to be stopped. No, it is the result of ignorance and on the part of public. No, it's not the result of the ignorance, but because the public has to put themselves there, because it's in the long run, it is the public. It is the public that is responsible to put politicians to take responsibility. Could be prevented by the action of ordinary people. Um, so the public is ordinary people, right? So the public is ordinary people. We already know that could be prevented by the action of ordinary people. So the environmental damage could be prevented by the action of ordinary people, which is answer C. Can only be stopped by educating business leaders. No, none of these three options are available. It is pretty simple, I guess. The writer describes ways in which the public can do what, I mean, that by suing businesses for harming them, suing means to set fines, for example, as happened after the Exxon Valdez disaster, in which over 40,000 meter cubed of oil were spilled off the coast of Alaska. The public may also make their opinion felt by preferring to buy sustainably harvested product. All right, by making employees of companies with poor track records feel ashamed of their company and complain to their own management. By preferring their governments to award valuable contracts to businesses with a good environmental track record, and by pressing their governments to pass and enforce laws and regulations requiring good environmental practices. So the writer describes ways in which public can uh, it's giving several steps to take actions. So reduce their own individual impact on the environment, learn more about the impact, influence the environmental policies of businesses and governments, um, raise awareness of the effects. No, there are no effects. Most probably option number D, influence the environmental policies of businesses and governments. Of course, governments and businesses. Contracts to business ends, blah blah blah. But there's not necessarily reduce their own individual impact. Their own individual impact means public taking action. So this is not correct option. So that's why this is an incorrect answer. Learn more about the impact of business on the environment. No, they don't want to learn more. They just have to take actions, and these are the instructions of what they have to do. They have to prefer to buy sustainable harvested products, put um, employees of the companies with poor track records feel ashamed of their company and complain to their own management. Governments to avoid valuable contracts to businesses, and pressing the governments to pass enforce laws and regulations, enforceable laws and regulations, I would say here. So raise awareness of the effects. There are no effects. So last option is influence the environmental policies, because influencing, which means do that by suing businesses for harming them. Do that by suing businesses for harming them. This is the option for question number 33. So last but not least, of multiple choice questions, what pressure was exerted by big businesses in the case of the disease BSE? In turn, big businesses can export powerful pressure on any suppliers that might ignore public or government pressure. For instance, after the U.S. public became concerned about the spread of disease known as BSE, which was transmitted to humans through infected meat, the U.S. government's Food and Drug Administration introduced rules demanding that the meat industry abandon practices associated with the risk of the disease spreading. But for 5 years, the meat packers refused to follow these. Okay, so they have put in a rule here, but they refused to follow these, claiming that they would be too expensive to obey. However, when a major fast food company then made the same demands after customer purchase of its hamburgers plummeted, the meat industry complied within weeks, which means it started working within weeks. The public's task is therefore to identify which links in the supply chain are sensitive to public pleasure. For instance, fast food chains or jewelry stores, but not meat packers or gold miners. What pressure was exerted by big businesses? Meat packers stopped supplying. No, of course they didn't buy. A fast food company forced their meat suppliers to follow the law. Of course, meat packers persuaded the government. No, they did not persuade. So they persuade the government. That's not the correct option. Meat packers stopped supplying hamburgers. No, it's not. Meat packers they do not supply hamburgers. A fast food chain does. So a fast food company encouraged the government to introduce legislation. No, they did not encourage the government. So these options are not available. So option number B is the correct option here. Therefore, now question number 35. So 35. the public should be prepared to fund environmental practices. As you can see, question number 35 and to 39, the questions are yes or no given, which means they will follow the order. Uh, as always, I mean, the question, summary completion, multiple choice, yes or no given questions, they all follow the order, except for this one, we have to understand the plot. Now, question number 35, the public should be prepared to fund good governmental practices. Okay. Did we find anything there? Uh, we don't have. Okay, let's read because we are left only with two. Some readers might be disappointed. Once again, the public should be prepared to fund good environmental practices. Some readers may be disappointed or outraged that I place the ultimate responsibility for business practices harming the public on the public itself. I also believe that the public must accept it necessarily for higher prices for products to cover the added costs. Well, it's very nice. I also believe that the public must accept the necessity for higher prices for products to cover the added costs, right? If any of sound environmental practices, um, the public should be prepared to fund. So kind of yes, the public must accept means the public must accept means somehow public must accept means that it is should be prepared. So I think this is going to be yes. The main idea of yes or not giving questions is to you just have to differentiate if these if these question statements are different or uh, or the same or they're not available in the passage. You just have to differentiate it, and that's it. So this one is question number 35. Okay, so I'm gonna take that away. If there's a contrast between the moral principles of different, I mean, there is a contrast between the moral principles of different businesses. My view may seem to ignore the belief that businesses should act in accordance with moral principles. To ignore the beliefs of moral principles, even if this leads to a reduction in their profits. um, Reduction of their profits. But I think we have to recognize that throughout human history, in all politically complex human societies, government regulation has arisen precisely because it was found that not only did moral principles need to be made explicit, they also needed to be enforced. Yes, my views may seem to ignore the belief that businesses should act in accordance with moral principles. Um, but there's a contrast between moral principles of different businesses. Um, we don't find any comparison, do we? We don't find moral principles of different businesses. We don't find contrast, which is comparison. I'm just gonna give it not given. Not given. It is important to make a clear distinction. To make a clear distinction, that means dichotomy, or to differentiate between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Acceptable and unacceptable behavior. To me, the conclusion that the public has ultimate responsibility for the behavior of even the biggest businesses is empowering and hopeful rather than disappointing. So it is important to make clear decision. My conclusion is not a moralistic one about who's right or wrong, admirable or selfish, a good guy or a bad guy. In the past, business have changed when the public came to expect and require different behavior to reward business for behavior, and the public wanted and that the public wanted, and to make things difficult for business to practice behaviors that the public didn't want. Um, that is a weird thing. But he is saying that my conclusion is not a moralistic, right or wrong, admirable or selfish, good guy or a bad guy. It is important to make a clear distinction now. He's not making any. He's not making any distinctions here. So therefore, that's not the answer is going to be the opposite. The public have successfully influenced businesses in the past. Of course, in the past, businesses have changed when the public came to expect and require different behavior, which is going to be yes. when the public. So here, just gonna highlight that as question number 38. 38. Here it's going to be 37. And so this is going to be no. Question 38 is going to be no. In the future, businesses will show more concern for the government. So I predict, which is a future, that in the future, just as in the past, changes in public attitudes will be essential for changes in business environment practices. Businesses will show more concern for the environment. Ah, very interesting. Okay. Is it not given? Why did I say that? No, it should be yes. Sorry for that. Okay. Just as in the past, changes in public attitudes will be essential. B- Business, it's the businesses will show more concern, but it's not actually talking about anything regarding concerns, right? I predict that in the future, just as in the past, changes in public attitudes will be essential. Businesses will show more concern. No, and it's not given. It doesn't show more concern, especially the businesses. What would be the best subheading for this passage? The overall idea. What is the overall idea? What will the world survive the threat caused by big businesses? Will the world survive the threat? No, it's not. It's not that. How can big businesses be encouraged to be less driven by profit? Not exactly that. The this type of question is asking to choose a suitable answer, right? The question is set found as the last question is set in most passages, so you should not worry about this so much. But however, the problem is what would be the best heading here is that the overall idea of the passage is that both big businesses and the general public are to blame for the damage caused by the environment. So we cannot just close our eyes or blindly offend or blame big businesses for the damage, merely for the damage, right? So how can big businesses be encouraged to be less driven? It's not only the big businesses' problem. So that's not the option as well. What environmental dangers are caused by the greed of the businesses? Which means so the only option D is are big businesses to blame for the damage that they cause the environment? So most probably, I think option number D is the answer. So yeah, there we go, guys. We finished finally quite Cambridge um Cambridge IELTS 15. Yeah, if you have any questions, comment down below. And yeah, the upcoming or the following episode is going to be quite Cambridge 16. I think it's going to be quite interesting to follow as well. So yeah, if you have any questions, make sure to comment down below. Do not hesitate to write about your opinions. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Smash that wonderful like button. If you hate it, you can of course smash the dislike as well. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. Have a wonderful time ahead.